The tears weren't from sadness, not anymore. They were tears of rage, blurring the Christmas lights strung haphazardly across the porch. I could hear the muffled laughter inside, Mom's high-pitched giggle cutting through the forced cheer. They were celebrating my humiliation. They thought they had trapped me, used me one last time, but little did they know, the trap had just sprung on them. If you've ever felt betrayed by your own mother, father, sister, or brother, subscribe now. Flying home for Christmas had felt like walking into a carefully constructed stage play. The familiar scent of pine needles and cinnamon couldn't mask the undercurrent of tension that always permeated my family gatherings. My mother, bless her heart, had laid it on thick, the guilt trip about family being together and it wouldn't be Christmas without you, Kennedy. I'd caved, of course. I always caved. The expensive plane ticket was just the first red flag, a subtle sign that I was being set up. I should have known better. Years of emotional manipulation and financial exploitation should have taught me to read the signs, but a naive part of me still craved their approval, their love. The moment I walked through the door, the charade began. Overly enthusiastic hugs, forced smiles, and the constant refrain of, "We're so glad you're here." It all felt rehearsed. My younger siblings, still in their teens, barely acknowledged my arrival, glued to their phones, radiating the usual teenage angst. My father, ever the silent observer, offered a curt nod and retreated behind his newspaper. The bombshell dropped on Christmas Eve, disguised as a casual request. "Oh, Kennedy, darling," my mother began, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "Your father and I were hoping to get away for a few days, just a little vacation, to recharge after the holidays." She gestured vaguely towards my younger siblings. "And it would be such a help if you could, watch the kids." My blood ran cold. A few days translated to at least a week, maybe more. A little vacation meant a luxurious getaway, undoubtedly funded, at least in part, by my own contributions to the family fund over the years. The family fund was the thing I was guilted into paying into every month, under the guise that it was for emergencies or unexpected expenses. The emergencies or unexpected expenses, as they turned out, were my parents' penchant for spontaneous getaways. So that I never forgot my place in the family, I was always reminded of how much of a burden I was when I was younger, how much of a financial strain and drain I was. I stayed silent, a knot forming in my stomach. My siblings perked up at the news of my impending babysitting duties, their eyes gleaming with barely concealed glee. They saw me as the fun older sister who wouldn't enforce rules or make them do chores. My father, predictably, remained silent, his gaze fixed on his newspaper as if the entire conversation was beneath him. The injustice of it all was suffocating. I had used my precious vacation days and spent a small fortune to come home for Christmas, only to be relegated to the role of unpaid nanny and resident ATM. They hadn't even asked. They had simply informed me. The audacity was breathtaking. I plastered on a fake smile and agreed, my mind already racing, plotting my escape and formulating my revenge. I would play their game, for now. I would lull them into a false sense of security, and then, when they least expected it, I would expose their lies and reveal the truth. The person I trusted most was one of them. The weight of their expectations settled on me like a lead blanket. Sleepless nights followed, the cheap guest room mattress doing little to ease my racing thoughts. Each creak of the floorboards, each muffled conversation from behind closed doors, fueled my resentment. I tried to reason with them, to explain that I had my own life, my own responsibilities, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. My mother would sigh dramatically, reminding me of all the sacrifices they had made for me over the years, conveniently omitting the fact that I had been paying them back, with interest, for the last 5. My father would simply shrug, his silence speaking volumes. He had always been the master of passive aggression, the puppet master pulling the strings from the shadows. The days crawled by, each one a monotonous cycle of cooking, cleaning, and refereeing sibling squabbles. My younger brother, a budding sociopath with a penchant for video games and petty theft, delighted in tormenting me.
He would hide my phone, change the TV settings, and generally make my life a living nightmare. My sister, a drama queen obsessed with social media, would constantly demand my attention, seeking validation for her every outfit and online post. I felt like a prisoner in my own childhood home, trapped in a time warp of dysfunction and resentment. One evening, while I was washing dishes, my mother sauntered into the kitchen, a smug look on her face. "Kennedy, darling," she purred, "your father and I have decided to extend our vacation. We're having such a wonderful time, and the kids seem to be doing just fine with you." My hands tightened around the soapy sponge, my knuckles turning white. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Oh, just another week or so," she replied casually, as if she were discussing the weather. "Don't worry, we'll make it up to you." I scoffed internally. Make it up to me? How could they possibly compensate for the emotional distress, the lost wages, the sheer disrespect? My mother's eyes narrowed, sensing my defiance. "Don't get an attitude, Kennedy," she snapped. "We're doing this for you. It's important for family to stick together, to support each other." The hypocrisy was astounding.
They were using the concept of family as a weapon, a tool to manipulate and control me. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to tell them exactly what I thought of their selfish behavior, but I held my tongue. I knew that an outburst would only play into their hands, confirming their narrative of me as the difficult, ungrateful daughter. Instead, I forced a smile and said, "Of course, Mom, anything for family." As she turned to leave, I saw a flicker of unease in her eyes. She knew that I was playing along, that something was brewing beneath the surface. And that's exactly what I wanted her to think. I started documenting everything, every conversation, every request, every subtle act of manipulation. I recorded phone calls, saved text messages, and even started keeping a detailed journal, chronicling the events of each day. I knew that I needed evidence, irrefutable proof of their deceit, if I was going to expose them. The more I gathered, the more emboldened I became. The fear that had held me captive for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a burning desire for justice. I would not be their doormat any longer. I would not allow them to exploit me, to take advantage of my kindness. I would fight back, and I would win. One afternoon, while rummaging through my mother's closet for a misplaced Christmas ornament, I stumbled upon a locked box hidden beneath a pile of old sweaters. Curiosity piqued, I carefully pried it open with a hairpin. Inside, I found a stack of documents, bank statements, investment records, and legal papers. As I began to sift through them, my blood ran cold. The family fund wasn't what they had claimed it to be. It wasn't a savings account for emergencies or unexpected expenses. It was a slush fund, a secret account used to finance their lavish lifestyle, their gambling debts, and their various extramarital affairs. And, to my horror, I discovered that a significant portion of the money in that account came directly from me. Years of hard work, of sacrificing my own dreams and ambitions, had been funneled into their secret stash, used to fuel their selfish indulgences. The betrayal was staggering, a punch to the gut that left me gasping for air. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, followed by an overwhelming surge of rage. This wasn't just about being forced to babysit my siblings or being guilt-tripped into paying for their vacations. This was about years of lies, of manipulation, of financial exploitation. They had stolen my money, my time, and my trust. And now it was time to make them pay. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, the room spinning into a vortex of betrayal and deceit. I slammed the box shut, the sound echoing in the suffocating silence of the closet. My breath came in ragged gasps, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I stumbled out of the closet, my legs shaky, my mind reeling. I needed to get out, to escape the confines of this toxic house, to breathe fresh air. I grabbed my coat and keys, ignoring the curious glances of my siblings as I stormed out the door. The cold December air stung my face, but it did little to quell the fire that raged within me. I drove aimlessly, the highway stretching out before me like a black ribbon, leading nowhere. The Christmas lights that adorned the houses along the way seemed to mock me, their cheerful glow a stark contrast to the darkness that had consumed my soul. I pulled over to the side of the road, burying my face in my hands, the weight of my family's treachery crushing me. I had always known that they were selfish, that they were manipulative, but I had never imagined the extent of their depravity. The realization that they had been systematically exploiting me for years, that they had been using me as a personal ATM, was almost too much to bear. The tears came then. Not the angry tears of the Christmas porch, but tears of grief, of disappointment, of profound loss. I had lost my family, or rather, I had finally seen them for who they truly were: calloused, greedy strangers who cared for nothing but their own self-interest. As the sky darkened, casting long shadows across the landscape, I felt a sense of despair wash over me. I was alone, with no one to turn to, no one to trust. My phone buzzed incessantly, text messages from my mother demanding to know where I was, accusing me of being irresponsible, of ruining Christmas. I ignored them, letting the phone die, severing the last remaining connection to my toxic family. I was at rock bottom, stripped bare, with nothing left to lose. And in that moment of utter despair, a spark of defiance ignited within me. I would not let them break me. I would not let them define me. I would rise from the ashes of their betrayal, stronger and more determined than ever before. I spent the night in my car, parked in a deserted rest area, the hum of passing trucks a constant reminder of my isolation. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, I made a decision. I would not run. I would not hide. I would stay and fight. But I would not fight on their terms. I would not engage in emotional arguments or petty squabbles. I would wage a calculated strategic war, using their own greed and deceit against them. I started by mapping out their weaknesses: my mother's insatiable need for validation, her desperate attempts to maintain a facade of perfection, my father's gambling addiction, his mounting debts, and his secret affairs. My siblings' dependence on social media, their constant craving for attention, their vulnerability to online manipulation. I realized that their biggest weakness was their arrogance, their belief that they were untouchable, that they could get away with anything. They had underestimated me, mistaking my kindness for weakness, my silence for compliance. And that was their fatal mistake. I returned to the house, my face mask of composure firmly in place. My mother greeted me with a mixture of relief and annoyance. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "We were worried sick." I simply smiled and said, "I just needed some air, Mom. I'm fine now, and I'm ready to help with whatever you need." She looked at me suspiciously, but I held her gaze, unwavering. I knew that I had to gain their trust, to lull them into a false sense of security before I could strike. Over the next few days, I played the part of the dutiful daughter, anticipating their every need, catering to their every whim. I cooked their favorite meals, ran their errands, and even offered to pay for a few extra luxuries on their vacation. My siblings were delighted, showering me with praise and affection. My mother, however, remained wary, her eyes constantly searching for any sign of my true intentions. My father, as always, remained silent, his gaze inscrutable. I knew that he was the key to their downfall. He was the one who held the purse strings, the one who controlled the narrative, and I knew that if I could turn him against my mother, I could shatter their carefully constructed world. The opportunity presented itself on New Year's Eve. My parents had planned a lavish party, inviting all their friends and acquaintances to celebrate the start of a new year. As the guests arrived dressed in their finest attire, I circulated through the crowd, playing the role of the charming and gracious hostess. I made sure to compliment my mother on her dress, to praise my father's business acumen, and to engage my siblings in witty banter. But beneath the surface, I was carefully observing, listening for any clue, any weakness that I could exploit. Later in the evening, as the music swelled and the champagne flowed, I found my father alone in his study, nursing a glass of whiskey. I seized the opportunity. "Dad," I said softly, "can I talk to you for a moment?" He looked up, his eyes bloodshot, his expression weary. "What is it, Kennedy?" he asked gruffly. I took a deep breath and said, "I know about the family fund." His eyes widened, his face paling. "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "I know that it's not a savings account for emergencies," I continued, my voice steady. "I know that it's a slush fund, used to finance your gambling debts and your other activities." He remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. I pressed on. "And I know that a significant portion of the money in that account came directly from me." His shoulders slumped, his body deflating. "How did you find out?"
He whispered. "It doesn't matter.
I replied. What matters is that I know the truth, and I'm not going to let you get away with it. I paused, letting my words sink in. I'm giving you a choice, Dad, I said. You can either come clean, tell Mom everything, and face the consequences together, or I can expose you both and watch your world come crashing down. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. What do you want me to do? He asked. I smiled. The trap had been laid, and my father had just walked right into it. The hunter has now become the hunted, and the game has only just begun. Tell Mom everything, I repeated, watching his reaction closely. The color had completely drained from his face, leaving him looking years older. He knew that confessing to my mother would mean the end of his comfortable life, the exposure of his secrets, the shattering of his carefully constructed image. But he also knew that defying me would be even worse. I held all the cards, and he was finally starting to realize it. I don't know if I can, he stammered, his voice barely audible. She'll never forgive me. That's not my problem, Dad, I said coldly. You should have thought about that before you started stealing my money and betraying my trust. I gave him an ultimatum. 24 hours. He had 24 hours to tell my mother the truth. If he didn't, I would. And I would make sure that everyone knew exactly what they had done. I left him standing there, alone and defeated, the weight of his sins crushing him. As I walked away, I could feel his gaze burning into my back. He was a desperate man, and desperate men are capable of anything. I knew that I had to be careful, that I couldn't let my guard down for a second. I returned to my room and started formulating my plan. I needed to gather more evidence, to solidify my case, to ensure that they couldn't wriggle their way out of this. I reactivated my old laptop, the one I had used in college, and installed a sophisticated data recovery program. I knew that my parents were tech illiterate, but I couldn't take any chances. They might have deleted files, erased emails, or even tried to destroy evidence. I spent hours combing through their devices, meticulously searching for any incriminating information. I found a treasure trove of data, emails detailing their financial transactions, text messages revealing their affairs, and even photographs documenting their gambling trips. The evidence was overwhelming, irrefutable, but I needed more. I needed something that would expose their lies to the world, something that would shatter their carefully constructed facade of respectability. I decided to focus on the family fund. I knew that the bank statements and investment records were damning, but they were also complex and difficult to understand. I needed to simplify the information, to present it in a way that anyone could grasp. I created a detailed spreadsheet outlining every transaction, every deposit, every withdrawal. I highlighted the amounts that had come directly from me, calculating the total sum that they had stolen over the years. The number was staggering, a testament to their greed and their audacity. But the spreadsheet alone wasn't enough. I needed to connect the dots, to show how they had used my money to finance their lavish lifestyle. I gathered photographs of their expensive vacations, their designer clothes, their luxury cars. I juxtaposed these images with the spreadsheet data, creating a visual representation of their deceit. The contrast was stark, undeniable. I knew that I was getting closer, that I was on the verge of exposing their lies. But I also knew that they would fight back, that they would do anything to protect their secrets. That night, I installed a hidden camera in the living room, disguised as a Christmas ornament. I wanted to capture their reactions, to record their conversations, to document their attempts to cover up their crimes. I knew that it was a risky move, that I could face legal consequences if I was caught, but I was willing to take the chance. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of shouting. My parents were arguing, their voices echoing through the house. I crept downstairs and hid behind the kitchen door, listening intently. "I can't believe you told her," my mother screamed. "Are you trying to ruin us?" "I didn't have a choice," my father retorted. "She knows everything. She has proof." "Proof? What proof?" my mother demanded. "She found the bank statements, the investment records," my father said, his voice trembling. "She knows about the family fund." My mother gasped, her face turning ashen. "That little snake," she hissed. "How dare she spy on us?" "It doesn't matter how she found out," my father said. "What matters is that she knows, and she's threatening to expose us." "We can't let that happen," my mother exclaimed. "We have to stop her." I knew that this was my cue. I stepped out from behind the door, my face a mask of composure firmly in place. "Stop me from what, Mom?" I asked innocently. "From telling the truth?" The room fell silent, the tension palpable.
My parents stared at me, their eyes filled with a mixture of anger and fear. They knew that the game was up, that their carefully constructed world was about to crumble, and I was ready to watch it burn. The anticipation was almost unbearable. The countless hours of planning, the meticulous gathering of evidence, the sleepless nights spent plotting my revenge, it had all led to this moment. They thought they were untouchable. They thought they could get away with anything, but they were wrong. I was about to expose them for who they truly were: liars, cheats, and thieves, and I was going to enjoy every second of it.
Truth? My mother spat the word like venom. You think you know the truth? You know nothing. We gave you everything. We sacrificed everything for you. My siblings, drawn by the commotion, stood huddled in the doorway, their faces a mixture of confusion and apprehension. I ignored them, focusing my attention on my mother. Sacrificed? I laughed, the sound hollow and bitter. You call stealing my money sacrificing? You call lying to me for years sacrificing? You used me. You drained me dry. And now you're trying to pretend that you're the victims? My mother's face contorted with rage. She lunged at me, her nails extended, her eyes burning with malice. I'll silence you, she screamed. My father stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Stop it, Carol, he yelled. This isn't going to solve anything. My mother shoved him aside, her gaze fixed on me. She needs to be taught a lesson, she snarled. She needs to learn her place. I stood my ground, refusing to back down. I had endured their abuse for too long. I was no longer the naive, compliant daughter they had always known. I was a force to be reckoned with, and I was not afraid to fight back. You want to teach me a lesson? I said, my voice steady. Then let me teach you one. The truth always comes out, and when it does, there's no hiding from it. I pulled out my phone and held it up, the screen displaying the spreadsheet I had created. This is just a small sample of the evidence I have, I said. Bank statements, emails, text messages, photographs. I have everything I need to expose your lies to the world. My mother's face paled, her bravado crumbling. She knew that I was serious, that I had the power to destroy everything they had worked so hard to build. What do you want? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. What do you want us to do? I want the truth, I said. I want you to admit what you've done. I want you to apologize, and I want you to pay me back every single penny you stole from me. My mother hesitated, her pride warring with her fear. She knew that admitting guilt would mean admitting defeat, but she also knew that defying me would be even more costly. We need time to think, she stammered. We need to talk. You've had years to think, I said. You've had years to talk. Now it's my turn to decide. I gave them 1 week. 1 week to come clean, to confess their crimes, and to make amends. If they failed to do so, I would unleash the full force of my evidence upon them, and their lives would never be the same. The next few days were a blur of activity. I worked tirelessly, refining my plan, gathering more evidence, and preparing for the inevitable fallout. I contacted a lawyer, outlining my case and seeking legal advice. I informed my employer that I might need to take some time off, explaining that I was dealing with a family emergency. I even reached out to a few trusted friends, confiding in them about the situation and asking for their support. They were shocked and horrified by what I told them, but they rallied around me, offering their help and encouragement. Their support gave me the strength I needed to keep going, to stay focused on my goal. Meanwhile, my parents were in a state of panic. They alternated between pleading, threatening, and attempting to bribe me into silence. They offered me money, cars, and even a share of their business, all in exchange for my silence. But I refused to be swayed. I was not motivated by greed or revenge. I was motivated by justice. I wanted them to be held accountable for their actions, to face the consequences of their choices. As the deadline approached, the tension in the house reached a fever pitch. My parents were constantly arguing, their voices echoing through the halls. My siblings were caught in the middle, confused and frightened by the escalating conflict. I tried to remain detached, to maintain a facade of calm, but inside I was a whirlwind of emotions. I was angry, hurt, and scared, but I was also determined. I would not let them break me. I would not let them win. On the final day, I gathered my evidence, packed my bags, and prepared to leave. I had given them every opportunity to do the right thing, to come clean and make amends, but they had refused.
They had chosen to protect their secrets, to preserve their lies, even at the cost of their own family. As I walked out the door, I turned to face Come one last time. "I hope you know what you're doing," I said, my voice cold and distant, "because after today, there's no going back." I stepped outside, took a deep breath of fresh air, and walked away. I drove straight to the lawyer's office, handed over my evidence, and instructed him to file a lawsuit against my parents for fraud, theft, and emotional distress. The trap was set, the fuse was lit, and the explosion was imminent. I knew that this would be a long and difficult battle, but I was prepared to fight. I was ready to expose their lies, to reveal their secrets, and to bring them to justice. The game was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. Hours later, a call. It was from an unknown number. I answered it. The voice on the other end was my mother's, laced with a desperate plea. "Kennedy, please," she begged. "Don't do this. Think about your family." I hung up. The final act was about to begin.
The lawsuit hit them like a tidal wave. It was public. Every detail of their deceit, every stolen dollar, every sordid affair splashed across the news. The local papers ran headlines screaming about the prominent family brought to its knees by their own daughter. The internet exploded with outrage. Their friends, their colleagues, their entire social circle vanished overnight. The country club memberships were revoked. The invitations dried up. The whispers followed them everywhere. My father lost his job. His reputation, built over decades of careful cultivation, crumbled into dust. He tried to issue a statement full of denials and half-truths, but nobody believed him. The evidence was too overwhelming, the damage too profound. My mother fared no better. Her social standing, her carefully curated image as a pillar of the community, was shattered beyond repair. The charity board she sat on demanded her resignation. The boutiques she frequented refused her service. She became a pariah, ostracized and reviled. Even my siblings turned against them, disgusted by their lies and their betrayal. The house, once a symbol of their success, became a prison, a monument to their shame. I watched it all unfold from a distance, a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow swirling within me. I had achieved my goal. I had exposed their lies and brought them to justice. But the victory felt hollow, the triumph bittersweet. The family I had once loved was now irrevocably broken, destroyed by their own greed and their own deceit. The courtroom was packed on the day of the trial. My parents sat at the defendant's table, their faces pale and drawn, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resentment. I sat across from them, my lawyer by my side, my heart pounding in my chest. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, meticulously documenting my parents' crimes. The bank statements, the emails, the text messages, the photographs, it was all there, laid bare for the world to see. My parents' lawyer tried to argue that I was motivated by spite, that I was exaggerating their misdeeds, that they had only wanted what was best for me. But the jury wasn't buying it. They saw through the lies, they recognized the truth, and they delivered a swift and decisive verdict: guilty. My parents were convicted on all counts: fraud, theft, and emotional distress. They were sentenced to several years in prison in order to pay me back every penny they had stolen, with interest. As the judge read the sentence, I watched my parents' faces crumble. The mask of composure they had worn for so long finally shattered, revealing the raw fear and desperation beneath. My father looked at me, his eyes filled with a plea for forgiveness, but I offered him nothing. His chance for redemption had passed. My mother simply stared straight ahead, her face a blank canvas of despair. They were led away in handcuffs, their lives in ruins, their world in ashes. In the aftermath, I tried to rebuild my life. I focused on my career, my friends, and my own well-being. I went to therapy to process the trauma and to heal the wounds of the past. It was a long and difficult journey, but I emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I learned that family isn't always about blood, that trust is a precious commodity, and that justice, while sometimes slow, eventually prevails. I never spoke to my parents again. They tried to reach out, to apologize, to reconcile, but I refused to engage. Their betrayal was too deep, their lies too damaging. I had forgiven them, but I could not forget. Some people told me that I was being too harsh, that I should have given them another chance. But I knew that I had made the right decision. I had protected myself, I had stood up for myself, and I had finally broken free from their toxic control. They lost everything. I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet. It's necessary. It's about reclaiming your power, about standing up for yourself, about refusing to be a victim. It's about sending a message that you will not be silenced, that you will not be ignored, and that you will not be taken advantage of. It was about surviving. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.